I'm Elena, 29 years old, and I thought my younger sister's wedding would finally be the day we could put our painful past behind us. Instead, standing in that elegant ballroom watching Victoria deliver her maid of honor speech, I felt my heart shatter as she systematically destroyed me in front of 400 guests. But what happened next changed everything between us forever. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, I was the responsible older sister who spent her afternoons volunteering at the local animal shelter, while Victoria practiced her dance routines in our garage-turned studio. Our house always smelled like the lavender candles Mom lit during her yoga sessions, and the sound of Victoria's tap shoes against concrete became the soundtrack of my childhood. 3 years older than Victoria, I was naturally protective of my little sister. I helped her with homework, braided her hair for recitals, and cheered louder than anyone when she performed. Victoria was pure sunshine, blonde curls bouncing as she danced, green eyes sparkling with mischief, and a laugh that could make anyone smile. She was the kind of child who drew people in effortlessly. I found my passion in veterinary medicine early, spending weekends shadowing Dr. Martinez at the animal clinic, fascinated by how he could heal injured creatures with such gentle precision. My room was filled with anatomy books and photos of rescued animals rather than teen heartthrob posters. While other girls my age were experimenting with makeup, I was learning to bandage a hawk's broken wing. Victoria's world revolved around dance. She joined the local dance academy at age 5 and quickly became their star student. Ballet, jazz, contemporary, hip-hop, she excelled at everything. Our parents, both accountants who had given up their own creative dreams for stability, lived vicariously through Victoria's artistic success. Elena's going to be a wonderful veterinarian, Mom would say absently after my academic achievements, already turning to discuss Victoria's latest competition placement. But Victoria, she's going to be famous. Mark my words. The difference in their enthusiasm was subtle but unmistakable. My straight A's earned proud nods. Victoria's dance trophies earned celebrations, photo shoots, and detailed scrapbooks. I told myself it didn't matter. I was proud of Victoria too, and my path toward veterinary medicine felt right and meaningful. Everything shifted dramatically during my junior year of college. I was home for spring break, finally feeling confident about my future, when Mom called us both into the living room. Her face was pale, her hands shaking slightly as she clutched a folder of medical documents. "Girls, I need to tell you something," she began, her usually steady voice wavering. "The doctors found something during my routine mammogram. It's breast cancer. Stage 3. The world seemed to stop. Victoria immediately burst into tears, throwing her arms around Mom. I sat frozen, my mind racing through treatment protocols and survival statistics I'd learned in my biology courses. The scientist in me was already processing, planning, figuring out next steps. Over the following weeks, as Mom's treatment plan took shape, a crucial decision emerged. The chemotherapy schedule would require constant supervision and care. Someone needed to be there for appointments, to manage medications, to help with daily tasks when the treatments left her weak and nauseated. I was completing my pre-veterinary program at Oregon State, just a few hours away. Victoria had been accepted to the prestigious Juilliard School in New York, her lifelong dream finally within reach. The choice seemed obvious to everyone except me. "Elena's always been the caretaker type," Dad said during one of our family meetings. "And Victoria has this incredible opportunity. We can't ask her to give up Juilliard." "I could defer for a year," Victoria offered, though her voice carried the weight of reluctance. But the acceptance letter specifically said they rarely allow deferrals for their contemporary dance program. I looked at my little sister's face, saw the fear there, not just of losing Mom, but of losing her dreams. In that moment, my decision crystallized. "I'll take a leave of absence," I said quietly. "Victoria should go to Juilliard. This is her shot." The relief in Victoria's eyes was unmistakable, though she protested appropriately. "Elena, I can't let you do that. Your studies are important too. Veterinary school will always be there," I replied, believing it at the time. "Juilliard won't wait." So Victoria left for New York that fall, posting photos of her dance studio and new friends while I settled into a routine of medical appointments and medication schedules. Mom's treatment was aggressive and brutal. The chemotherapy left her nauseated, exhausted, and emotionally fragile. Some days she couldn't keep food down. Others, she was too weak to get out of bed. I became expert at managing her care, tracking medication times, preparing easily digestible meals, driving to endless appointments with oncologists, radiologists, and specialists. I learned to give injections, monitor for signs of infection, and provide emotional support when the treatment felt unbearable. Victoria called regularly at first, her voice bright with stories of her classes and performances. But gradually, those calls became shorter and less frequent. She was busy, building a life in the competitive world of professional dance. When she did call, the conversations focused on her experiences, her struggles with choreography, her excitement about upcoming showcases. "How's Mom today?" she'd ask, but often seemed distracted when I explained the challenges we were facing. Meanwhile, the stress of caregiving began taking its toll on me. I gained weight from irregular eating, grabbing fast food between appointments, stress eating during long nights when Mom couldn't sleep. My own health became secondary to managing her care. I developed anxiety attacks, struggled with insomnia, and found myself crying in hospital parking lots after particularly difficult days. The plan had been for me to return to school after Mom's treatment ended. But cancer doesn't follow neat timelines. Mom's response to treatment was slower than expected. Complications arose. What was supposed to be a 1-year pause in my education stretched into 2, then 3 years. When I finally tried to re-enter the pre-veterinary program, I discovered that my previous coursework had become outdated. Requirements had changed. I would need to start over in several subjects, and the competitive nature of veterinary school admissions meant that the gap in my education was a significant disadvantage. Victoria's career, meanwhile, was flourishing. She landed a position with a contemporary dance company in New York, then moved to Los Angeles when a choreographer discovered her during a showcase. Her Instagram filled with photos from music video shoots, commercial auditions, and glamorous industry events. She was living the creative life she'd always dreamed of. Mom's cancer went into remission during my 4th year of caregiving, but the experience had changed all of us. She was physically weakened and emotionally fragile. I had become her primary support system, the person she relied on for everything from remembering her medications to maintaining her social connections. When I finally attempted to rebuild my own life, I found myself at 27 with an incomplete education, no clear career path, and a profound sense of having lost crucial years. I eventually found work as a veterinary assistant, a job I loved but which felt like a compromise given my original dreams of becoming a veterinarian. Victoria's visits home became rare and brief. She'd arrive for holidays with expensive gifts and stories of her exciting life, take carefully curated photos with Mom for social media, then leave again after a few days. The contrast between our lives was stark, her excitement and forward momentum versus my sense of being stuck in place. 2 years ago, Mom suffered a recurrence. This time, I was her only local support system. Dad had developed his own health issues, diabetes, that required careful management. Victoria sent flowers and made sympathetic phone calls from Los Angeles, but the daily reality of care fell to me again. Mom passed away 8 months ago, leaving me emotionally devastated and practically adrift. Victoria flew in for the funeral, looking stunning in designer black, accepting condolences with practiced grace. She left 2 days later, citing work commitments, leaving me to handle the estate, sort through Mom's belongings, and support Dad through his grief. 6 months after Mom's funeral, Victoria called with news that surprised me. "Elena, I'm engaged," she announced, her voice bubbling with excitement. "His name is Marcus Wellington. He's a film producer, incredibly successful, and absolutely wonderful." I offered genuine congratulations, having long accepted that Victoria's life operated on a different plane from mine. What surprised me was her next statement. "Marcus really wants to meet you," she said. "He's very big on family connections. He keeps asking when he'll get to meet my sister." The engagement party was held at an exclusive rooftop venue in Beverly Hills. I flew down from Portland, immediately feeling out of place among the industry professionals, actors, and wealthy socialites who made up Victoria's current social circle. Victoria greeted me with an air kiss and a quick introduction to her maid of honor, a fellow dancer named Scarlett, before disappearing into the crowd of well-wishers. I found myself standing alone near the bar, nursing a glass of wine and wondering how soon I could politely leave, when a warm voice spoke behind me. "You must be Elena," came the friendly tone.
"I'm Marcus."
"I've been looking forward to meeting you." Marcus Wellington was not what I'd expected. Despite his success and wealth, he carried himself with genuine humility and warmth. He was tall with kind eyes and an easy smile that seemed completely authentic. Instead of the superficial charm I'd anticipated, he asked thoughtful questions about my work with animals, my time caring for Mom, and my life in Portland. "Victoria's told me about everything you did for your mother," he said, his voice carrying sincere admiration. "That kind of sacrifice and dedication, it says everything about who you are as a person." I was surprised by his knowledge of my situation, and even more surprised by his genuine respect for the choices I'd made. Most people, when they learned about the years I'd spent caregiving, offered polite sympathy before quickly changing the subject. Marcus seemed genuinely interested in understanding that experience. "Family is everything," he continued. "I lost my own mother when I was young, and I've always admired people who step up when their loved ones need them. What you did was extraordinary." Before I could respond, Victoria appeared beside us, slipping her arm possessively through Marcus's. "I see you've met my big sister," she said with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "She's wonderful," Marcus replied, giving my shoulder a gentle squeeze. "Just like you said she would be." Victoria's smile remained fixed, but something flickered behind her expression, an emotion I couldn't quite identify. "Elena's always been the responsible one," she said, her tone carrying an edge I recognized from childhood. "The one who stays home and takes care of everyone." Marcus looked puzzled by her tone, but before he could respond, Victoria pulled him away to meet some important industry contact, leaving me alone again with a strange sense of unease. The wedding invitation arrived 2 months later, an elaborate creation of ivory cardstock and gold foil announcing Victoria's Society Wedding of the Year. Enclosed was a handwritten note. "Marcus insists you be my maid of honor. Please call to discuss details."
Success. There.
The forced enthusiasm was obvious, even in her handwriting. I almost declined, knowing Victoria well enough to recognize this as Marcus's influence rather than her genuine desire. But something about Marcus's kindness at the engagement party, combined with a lingering hope that perhaps Victoria and I could finally heal our relationship, made me accept. The months leading up to Victoria's wedding became increasingly tense as my role as maid of honor forced us into closer contact than we'd maintained in years. Every interaction reinforced the fundamental differences in our perspectives and the wounds that had never properly healed. The dress shopping experience set the tone. Victoria had selected an upscale boutique in Beverly Hills where her other bridesmaids, all fellow dancers with identical slim builds, easily fit into the sample sizes. I watched them trying on the delicate slip dresses Victoria had chosen, feeling increasingly self-conscious about my fuller figure. "We'll need something completely different for Elena," Victoria announced to the consultant, her voice carrying clearly across the boutique. "She's not really built for the style we're going with." The consultant, a woman named Grace with silver hair and kind eyes, caught my embarrassed expression and quickly intervened. "Actually, I have several beautiful options that would complement your sister's lovely figure while coordinating perfectly with the other dresses." When I emerged from the dressing room in a beautifully tailored A-line that flattered my curves while maintaining the color scheme and formality level, I felt momentarily confident. The cut was sophisticated and elegant, making me feel beautiful rather than hidden. "Well," Victoria said, looking me up and down critically, "I suppose that's the best we can do with what we're working with." My brief moment of confidence evaporated. Later, processing the experience with my friend Sarah over coffee, I tried to explain the dynamic. "She's always been like this," I said, stirring my latte absently. "Nothing I do is ever quite right in her eyes." "Then why put yourself through this?" Sarah asked. You don't owe her your participation in something that makes you feel terrible. I couldn't fully articulate my reasons, some mixture of family obligation, lingering hope, and the ghost of our mother's expectations. Maybe things can be different now, I said instead. Maybe marriage will change your perspective. The bridal shower a month later proved my hope misguided. Victoria's friends gathered in Scarlett's Beverly Hills home, a space decorated with Instagram-worthy displays of white flowers and champagne towers. I arrived early to help set up, only to be assigned menial tasks while Victoria's inner circle handled the important arrangements. During gift opening, Victoria performed for her audience, exclaiming dramatically over each luxury item. When she opened my gift, a handcrafted memory box containing photos from our childhood, including several beautiful pictures of us with Mom, her enthusiasm visibly dimmed. How sweet, she said quickly, setting it aside to reach for the next elaborately wrapped package, a set of La Perla lingerie from one of her dancer friends. Later, while retrieving my purse from a bedroom, I overheard Victoria's voice from the adjoining bathroom. I only made her maid of honor because Marcus insisted, she was saying. He has this whole thing about family loyalty. It's exhausting, honestly. She seems nice enough, came Scarlett's voice. She's a constant reminder of everything I worked so hard to escape, Victoria replied. Every time someone meets us together, I can see them wondering how we're possibly related. It's mortifying. I slipped out without my purse, driving home with tears blurring my vision. That night, I seriously considered backing out of the wedding entirely. Only the thought of disappointing Dad, who was genuinely excited about both his daughters participating in the ceremony, kept me committed. The rehearsal dinner brought fresh tensions. Held at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the Pacific, the event gathered the wedding party and close family for what should have been an intimate celebration. Victoria alternated between completely ignoring me and performing exaggerated sisterly affection whenever Marcus was nearby. My amazing big sister, she cooed, throwing an arm around my shoulders when Marcus approached our table. I was just telling Elena how grateful I am to have her support tomorrow. The moment Marcus moved away to greet other guests, Victoria's arm dropped and she immediately turned to discuss after-party plans with her dancers, plans I hadn't been included in despite being maid of honor. What struck me most was Marcus's behavior throughout the evening. He seemed genuinely interested in including me in conversations, asking about my work at the veterinary clinic, and sharing stories that painted Victoria in a warm, loving light. His affection for my sister appeared completely authentic, which made her duplicity even more confusing. I also noticed subtle tensions between them. Quick disagreements smoothed over, Victoria's irritation when Marcus spent time talking to anyone else, his occasional weariness when she demanded his constant attention. These glimpses made me wonder about the foundation of their relationship, but it wasn't my place to question. The morning of Victoria's wedding dawned with perfect California weather and complete chaos in the bridal suite. Victoria had reserved the penthouse at one of Beverly Hills' most exclusive hotels, transforming it into a staging area for her metamorphosis. Hairstylists, makeup artists, photographers, and assistants moved around while Victoria held court at the center. I arrived early as requested, only to be largely ignored for the first hour while Victoria received treatments and posed for getting ready photos. When she finally acknowledged me, it was with a critical assessment. The makeup artist will need extra time with you, she said, examining my face like a flaw that needed correction. And please tell me you did something about those dark circles. You look exhausted. The makeup artist, a young man named Diego with an encouraging smile, gave me a sympathetic look as he worked. You have beautiful bone structure, he whispered. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The real drama began when Victoria's custom veil arrived. As she unwrapped it from layers of tissue paper, her face contorted in horror. This is completely wrong, she shrieked. The beading pattern is nothing like what I ordered. The wedding planner made frantic phone calls while Victoria worked herself into hysteria that seemed disproportionate even for a bride. Years of managing Mom's medical emergencies had given me unexpected crisis management skills. I examined the veil carefully, noting that while the beading was different, The wedding planner made frantic phone calls while Victoria worked herself into hysteria that seemed disproportionate even for a bride. Years of managing Mom's medical emergencies had given me unexpected crisis management skills. I examined the veil carefully, noting that while the beading was different, the overall effect was still stunning. "Let me try something," I said quietly, taking the veil to a well-lit corner. Using a small sewing kit I always carried, a habit from Mom's illness, when I'd often needed to make quick repairs, I carefully adjusted some of the positioning, enhancing the veil's drape to better frame Victoria's face. When I returned with the modified veil, the wedding planner looked relieved. Victoria examined it suspiciously. "It's still not what I ordered," she said, but allowed the hairstylist to position it. When she looked in the mirror, even Victoria couldn't deny the effect was breathtaking. The photographer immediately began capturing shots, exclaiming over how perfectly the veil caught the light. "I suppose it will have to do," Victoria conceded, not quite thanking me. Then, in a lower voice as others worked around us, she added, "Just try not to embarrass me today, okay? No dramatic moments or anything. Keep yourself together." The comment stung deeply. After all these years, Victoria still saw me as a liability rather than support. Part of me wanted to walk away, to refuse to participate in this performance of sisterly affection. But another part, the part that remembered the little girl who used to beg me to braid her hair for recitals, made me stay. The Wellington-approved wedding venue was nothing short of spectacular. A historic Beverly Hills estate transformed by an army of decorators into something between a fairy tale and a Hollywood dream. White roses and peonies created walls of flowers throughout the space, crystal chandeliers hung from pergolas, and hand-calligraphed place cards directed 400 guests to tables named after dance styles rather than numbers. Even the air smelled expensive, some custom fragrance Victoria had commissioned specifically for the day. I stood in the marble entryway, feeling like an imposter despite my professional styling and carefully selected dress. Around me swirled guests representing entertainment industry elite, directors in designer suits, actresses in architectural dresses, producers trying to look casual while networking. Dad appeared beside me, handsome in his rental tuxedo but looking as overwhelmed as I felt. "There's my girl," he said, squeezing my hand. "You look beautiful, Elena." "Thanks, Dad," I replied, grateful for his steady presence. "Quite the production Victoria has created." He nodded, his expression complex. "Your mother would have loved all this glamour, though I think she'd be prouder of you, for different reasons." Before I could respond, wedding coordinators were positioning the bridal party with military precision. The ceremony proceeded with cinematic perfection and theatrical flair. Victoria appeared at exactly the right moment, looking impossibly perfect in her couture gown, the troublesome veil now seeming designed specifically for this moment as it caught the strategically positioned lighting. From my place as maid of honor, I watched Marcus's face as Victoria approached. His expression showed genuine awe and love, though I noticed a tightness around his eyes that suggested something else, perhaps nervousness or concern. Victoria's expression was triumphant rather than tender, her eyes occasionally darting to the celebrity photographer rather than remaining fixed on her groom. The vows were beautiful but generic, clearly selected for their photogenic quality rather than personal meaning. No inside jokes or shared memories, nothing that would confuse the magazine editors who would later feature the wedding. Still, when Marcus spoke his promises, his voice carried a sincerity that momentarily transcended the spectacle around them. The reception space was equally impressive, a ballroom decorated with enough flowers to stock a nursery, tables set with crystal and gold, and a dance floor that would make any performer proud. As guests transitioned from ceremony to celebration, I discovered the first personal slight of the evening. Rather than being seated at the family table with the bride and groom, my place card directed me to a distant table with Dad's elderly cousins and family friends who hadn't warranted A-list placement. The message was clear. Biological necessity had earned me the maid of honor spot, but Victoria had no intention of featuring me prominently in her perfect evening. I was resigning myself to an evening of polite conversation with strangers when Marcus appeared beside me, his expression shifting from gracious host to genuine concern when he realized my situation. "There's been a mistake with the seating," he said decisively, signaling to a coordinator. "Elena should be at our table with the immediate family." The coordinator looked momentarily panicked. Mrs. Wellington was very specific about the arrangements. "I'm sure my wife would want her sister at the family table," Marcus replied, his tone pleasant but firm. "Please make the adjustment immediately." Minutes later, I found myself being escorted to the prominent head table where Dad sat with Marcus's parents and siblings. Victoria's carefully controlled expression when she saw me take my designated seat told me this had definitely not been an oversight. "We're so delighted to finally meet you," said Marcus's mother, Catherine, a graceful woman with silver-streaked blonde hair and warm brown eyes. "Marcus has told us so much about you." "He has." I couldn't hide my surprise. "Of course," Catherine continued. "He was particularly moved by your dedication to your mother during her illness. We went through something similar with my own mother. It takes exceptional strength to sacrifice your own plans for a loved one." Marcus's father, Robert, nodded in agreement. "Most admirable. Marcus also mentioned you work with animals. Veterinary medicine?" "I'm a veterinary assistant," I corrected, feeling the usual pang of what might have been. I had hoped to become a veterinarian, but life took me in a different direction. "The important thing is that you're helping animals," Catherine said kindly. "The title matters less than the heart behind the work." From across the table, I noticed Victoria watching our interaction with growing irritation. When Catherine excused herself to greet an old friend, Victoria immediately took her vacant seat beside me. "What are you doing?" she hissed under her breath, maintaining her smile for any watching cameras. "Having dinner with your in-laws?" I replied evenly. "They're lovely people." "This isn't about making new friends, Elena. This is my wedding day. Don't try to steal attention or make everything about you." The accusation was so absurd I almost laughed. "Victoria, I'm literally just sitting where Marcus asked me to sit and having polite conversation." "Just keep it low-key," she warned, standing as the photographer approached. Her expression transformed instantly into radiant joy as she posed for more shots. As Victoria was pulled away for photos, I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment to collect myself. In the elegant marble sanctuary, I stared at my reflection, trying to recognize the confident woman Diego had created with his makeup artistry. Instead, I saw only the insecure sister forever in Victoria's shadow. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "How's the wedding from hell going? Need an escape plan?" I smiled despite myself and typed back. "Complicated. Victoria being Victoria, but her husband seems genuinely kind. His family, too." "Remember your worth," Sarah replied. "Don't let her dim your light." With Sarah's encouragement bolstering me, I decided to return to the reception with a new approach. I would be polite, dignified, and engaged, but I wouldn't allow Victoria's insecurities to dictate my experience. This might be her day, but it was my life too. The reception continued through its choreographed perfection, the first dance professionally choreographed, the cake cutting designed for optimal photo composition, and a parade of gourmet courses I could barely eat through the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Victoria performed her role flawlessly, moving from table to table with practiced charm, laughing at all the right moments, posing for endless photos. From my seat at the family table, I maintained pleasant conversations with Marcus's extended family, learning about their close-knit dynamics and watching Dad enjoy himself more than he had in months. Perhaps sensing my discomfort, Marcus's parents made special efforts to include me, asking thoughtful questions about my work and sharing stories about Marcus's childhood that revealed the foundations of his character. As dinner plates were cleared and champagne flutes refilled for toasts, the wedding planner approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our special toasts, beginning with our maid of honor, Elena Lawson." My stomach dropped. This hadn't been discussed. In all our wedding planning conversations, Victoria had never mentioned wanting a maid of honor speech. I glanced toward her, confused, and saw her watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, anticipation mixed with something that looked almost like satisfaction. With no choice but to comply, I stood and approached the microphone on unsteady legs. 400 faces turned toward me as I fumbled for words, my mind blank with panic.
I,
I began, my voice shaking slightly. I want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate Victoria and Marcus. I paused, gathering my thoughts, trying to find something genuine to say about my sister's relationship. Victoria has always been someone who goes after what she wants. I continued, finding my footing. She's never been afraid to chase her dreams, and Marcus seems to understand and support that about her. I glanced at Marcus, who was watching me with encouraging eyes. I hope they build a life filled with love, understanding, and the kind of partnership that brings out the best in both of them. It was brief but sincere, and I thought I'd managed to navigate the unexpected moment gracefully. The audience applauded politely as I returned to my seat, relieved to have it over with. But Victoria wasn't finished. "Thank you, Elena," she said, standing gracefully and approaching the microphone herself. What a sweet, simple toast. So typical of my big sister, always keeping things basic. She smiled brilliantly at the audience, who chuckled at what seemed like gentle sisterly teasing. I wanted to take a moment to talk about family, especially my sister Elena. My stomach began to churn as Victoria's tone shifted subtly, taking on the quality I recognized from childhood, sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. Elena and I have had such different journeys, Victoria continued, gesturing toward me as spotlights illuminated our table. While I was pursuing my dreams in dance and eventually finding my way to Los Angeles, Elena stayed home in Portland, taking care of our mother during her illness. The audience murmured appreciatively, and for a moment, I hoped this might be a genuine tribute to the sacrifices I'd made. Of course, all those years of staying home really took their toll, Victoria continued, her voice carrying mock concern. I mean, we've all heard of stress eating, but Elena turned it into an art form. She could find comfort food in the most unlikely places, hospital vending machines, all-night diners, drive-thrus at 2 a.m. Uncomfortable laughter rippled through the crowd as Victoria warmed to her theme, her voice taking on a tone of false sympathy. And the isolation really affected her social skills too. Poor Elena hasn't been on a date in. How long has it been, sis? 3 years? 4? She laughed lightly. I tried to set her up with several eligible men, but apparently they all had very important prior commitments. Washing their hair, walking their dogs, reorganizing their sock drawers. The laughter grew more confident as guests realized this was meant to be humorous rather than cruel, though I noticed Marcus's parents exchanging uncomfortable glances. It's interesting how life works out, isn't it? Victoria continued, her smile never wavering. Here I am, living my dream life in Los Angeles, married to this incredible man, while Elena's still figuring things out. Still living in her hometown, still working the same job she had right after high school, still single, still struggling with her weight. Each word hit like a physical blow. I sat frozen, unable to move or speak as Victoria continued her systematic humiliation disguised as sisterly affection. But that's family for you, Victoria concluded with theatrical warmth. We love each other no matter what, even when one of us shows up looking like she raided the clearance rack at a plus-size store. The audience erupted in laughter, some people genuinely amused, others laughing because they felt they should. I felt tears forming in my eyes as the familiar shame of childhood washed over me. Every cruel comment about my appearance, every time I'd been made to feel inadequate, every wound Victoria knew exactly how to reopen. I saw Dad half rise from his seat, his face flushed with anger, but something kept him frozen. Perhaps shock, perhaps years of Victoria's behavior conditioning him to accept it as normal. Catherine and Robert Wellington sat rigid with horror, their expressions making it clear they understood exactly what they were witnessing. To Elena, Victoria concluded, raising her glass with perfect theatrical timing. Proof that life doesn't always go according to plan, but we make the best of what we've got. Love you, big sis. The applause that followed was uncertain at first, then gained momentum as guests followed social cues, treating this as normal sisterly ribbing rather than the public evisceration it actually was. Under the cover of this noise, I clutched my small purse and rose from my seat, desperate to escape before the tears spilled over completely. I couldn't bear another moment of this celebration, couldn't stomach the pitying glances or awkward conversations that would follow. As I stood, Victoria's eyes met mine across the room, and for an instant, I thought I saw something flicker there. Not quite remorse, but perhaps recognition that she'd gone too far. Then it vanished behind her practiced smile as she basked in her audience's reaction. I moved toward the exit, head down, focusing on each step to keep from completely falling apart. All I wanted was to escape, to find a taxi back to my hotel, to call the airline and change my flight home to tomorrow morning. I needed to get away from this place where I'd been systematically dismantled in front of 400 strangers. I had almost reached the ballroom doors when the sharp sound of someone tapping insistently on the microphone cut through the resumed dinner conversation. The room gradually quieted as attention shifted back toward the front, where Marcus now stood, microphone in hand, his expression unreadable. Against my better judgment, I paused at the threshold, curious despite my pain about what Victoria's new husband might say. Perhaps some conventional comment about his beautiful bride, allowing the evening to continue its glossy perfection despite the ugly moment that had just occurred. I could not have been more wrong. Marcus stood at the microphone, his tall frame commanding attention effortlessly. The easy charm that had characterized his demeanor all evening had vanished, replaced by a serious intensity that immediately silenced the room. His eyes scanned the crowd briefly before finding me frozen near the exit. "Before I say what I had originally planned to share tonight," he began, his voice steady and clear, "I need to address what just happened here." Victoria's radiant smile faltered as she looked up at her new husband, confusion crossing her perfect features. Around the room, guests exchanged uncertain glances, sensing a disruption in the evening's carefully orchestrated flow. Marcus stepped away from the head table, moving to the center of the room where everyone could see him clearly. Then, to the absolute astonishment of everyone present, he turned toward where I stood and spoke directly to me. "Stop right there, Elena," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom. "Don't you dare leave this room thinking that what just happened was acceptable, because it wasn't." 400 guests turned as one to look at me, standing frozen by the exit doors. My cheeks burned with embarrassment at being the center of attention, exactly what Victoria had accused me of seeking. "I need to apologize to you," Marcus continued, "and I need to do it publicly, because the humiliation you just endured was public too." Victoria's face had transformed from confusion to alarm. She rose from her seat, but Marcus held up a hand to stop her. "Many of you don't know Elena Lawson," he said, his voice growing warmer, "but I want to tell you what I know about her, because everything my wife just said was not only cruel, it was completely wrong." Marcus's parents were nodding grimly, while Dad's eyes filled with tears. Victoria sat rigidly, her expression cycling between panic and anger. "When their mother was diagnosed with cancer," Marcus continued, "Elena put her entire life on hold, her education, her career goals, her personal relationships, to become her mother's primary caregiver. For over 6 years, she coordinated medical treatments, managed medications, researched clinical trials, and provided the emotional support that allowed her mother to fight her illness with dignity." He turned more fully toward me, his expression both sad and determined. "I know what that kind of sacrifice means because I watched my own sister do something similar for our grandmother. It's not a path many people would choose, and it comes at enormous personal cost, but it reveals character of the highest order." The silence in the room was absolute now. No clinking silverware, no whispered comments, just 400 people witnessing something unprecedented. "Elena," Marcus said, speaking directly to me, "your sister's words tonight were cruel and untrue. They reflected nothing about who you are and everything about the insecurity of the person who spoke them. I want you to know that from the moment I learned about your dedication to your mother, I have had nothing but the deepest respect and admiration for you." He paused, then turned back to address Victoria, whose expression had shifted from alarm to fury. "Victoria," he said, his voice softer but still carrying clearly, "I've known for months how you talk about your sister. I've heard your dismissive comments, witnessed your casual cruelty, and seen how you try to diminish her whenever you think I'm not.